Every country gathering in the 1960s and 1970s seemed to begin the same way. Before supper was ready, before the coffee was poured, and before anyone sat down at the table, there was always something waiting to eat. A tray of deviled eggs, a bowl of pickled eggs, tiny ham biscuits sitting beside the coffee pot, little smokies bubbling away in the crock pot while somebody asked what smelled so good. These appetizers weren't the meal. They were the conversation before the meal, the reason people gathered around the kitchen while supper finished cooking. They gave neighbors something to nibble on while stories were told and coffee cups were filled. Today, many of these country favorites have nearly disappeared from American tables, but the memories surrounding them haven't gone anywhere. These are 25 country appetizers nobody makes anymore. 25 deviled eggs. If there was one appetizer that absolutely had to appear at every country gathering, it was deviled eggs. Church suppers had them, funeral dinners had them, Christmas dinners had them, family reunions had them. In fact, there were very few occasions in country America where somebody didn't arrive carrying a special platter filled with neatly arranged eggs dusted with paprika. The recipe itself was never complicated, but every cook seemed to have her own way of making them. A dozen eggs were boiled until firm, cooled in cold water, peeled carefully, and sliced down the middle. The yolks were mashed with mayonnaise, yellow mustard, vinegar, salt, and pepper until the mixture became smooth and creamy. Some families added sweet pickle relish. Others used a little sugar. Some swore by Miracle Whip, while others would never allow it anywhere near their kitchen. The filling was spooned back into the egg whites in generous mounds, often piled higher than the eggs themselves. Finally came the paprika, sprinkled lightly over the entire platter, giving every egg that familiar red-orange color that immediately told people exactly what was sitting on the table. The flavor was simple but perfect. The filling was creamy and rich, the mustard added a little tang, and the vinegar kept everything balanced. Most people never stopped at one. What made deviled eggs special wasn't the ingredients. Eggs were cheap. Mustard was cheap. Nearly everything needed for the recipe could already be found in the refrigerator. The real value came from the effort and the pride that went into making them. Many families owned a special deviled egg plate with little oval-shaped slots molded into the ceramic. Those plates only came out when company was expected. And when a woman carried that plate into a church basement or family gathering, everybody knew exactly whose eggs they were. Nobody had to ask. Some people were known for their pies, others for their casseroles, but plenty of country cooks built their reputation on deviled eggs. Even today, when the platter appears at a holiday dinner, it usually comes back empty. Some recipes simply refuse to disappear. 24. Cheese straws. Throughout much of the South, cheese straws were considered one of the highest compliments a hostess could offer her guests. They appeared at Christmas parties, wedding receptions, card games, church socials, and nearly every holiday gathering that involved a table full of food. At first glance, they looked simple enough, long, narrow strips of baked dough with little ridges running down the sides. But anyone who grew up eating homemade cheese straws knows they were something much more special. Sharp cheddar cheese formed the heart of the recipe. The cheese was worked into butter and flour until a stiff dough developed. Salt and cayenne pepper were added, although every family seemed to have a different opinion about exactly how much spice belonged in a proper cheese straw. Some cooks used cookie presses that squeezed the dough into long ribbons. Others rolled the dough by hand and cut each strip individually. Either way, the trays entered the oven pale and soft and came out golden, crisp, and smelling like butter and cheese. The first bite snapped like a cracker. Then the cheese began to melt. The cayenne appeared at the very end, leaving behind a warmth that made it difficult to stop after only one. During Christmas, old metal tins filled with cheese straws often traveled from house to house as gifts. Teachers received them. Neighbors received them. Ministers received them. Sometimes the same dented tin made the rounds every December for 20 years. Every Southern cook believed her recipe was the best one. Some used extra cheese. Some preferred more cayenne. Others insisted the dough had to rest before baking. Entire families defended their recipe as if it were a state secret. Modern grocery stores still sell cheese straws, but people who grew up with homemade versions usually say the same thing. They're not the same. Something about real butter, sharp cheese, and a recipe made by hand created a flavor that factories never managed to duplicate. And somewhere in thousands of kitchen drawers across the South, those handwritten recipes are still waiting. 23. Pickled eggs. The giant glass jar sitting on the counter used to be one of the most common sights in country America. Sometimes it sat inside a gas station, sometimes beside the register at a country store, sometimes behind the bar at a small-town tavern, and sometimes it sat quietly inside the refrigerator at home. Inside floated dozens of eggs, soaking in vinegar brine that turned them white, pink, or deep purple, depending on the recipe. Pickled eggs once appeared everywhere. Hard-boiled eggs were packed into large jars and covered with a mixture of vinegar, water, salt, sugar, and pickling spices. Some families added garlic, others added hot peppers. The famous pink version came from adding beet juice, which slowly colored both the whites and eventually the yolks. Then came the waiting. The eggs needed days, sometimes weeks. Slowly, the vinegar worked its way through the egg, transforming both the texture and flavor. The whites became firmer, the yolks became tangy. Every bite carried a sharpness that modern appetizers rarely offer. Country workers often grabbed one during lunch breaks. Hunters ate them at deer camp. Fishermen packed them in coolers. Bars served them alongside cold beer. And almost everybody had a favorite recipe. What makes pickled eggs so interesting is that they represent a style of cooking that modern America has largely forgotten. Nothing about them was instant. Nobody made pickled eggs an hour before company arrived. They required patience. They required planning. The jar sat quietly in the refrigerator while time did all the work. Today, many younger people have never tasted one. The large jars have disappeared from countless country stores. The tavern jars are mostly gone. But for the people who grew up seeing that glass jar sitting on the counter, the memory remains just as strong as the flavor itself. 22. Stuffed celery. Before vegetable trays came wrapped in plastic from the grocery store, stuffed celery served as one of the most common appetizers on country tables. Bright green celery stalks sat neatly arranged on platters during Christmas gatherings, Sunday dinners, and holiday parties throughout the 1960s and 1970s. They added color to the table and offered something cool and crisp among all the heavier foods. The preparation couldn't have been simpler. Cream cheese was softened and mixed with whatever ingredients the family preferred. Some added chopped olives, some used pimentos, others stirred in garlic powder, onion powder, Worcestershire sauce, or a little paprika. The mixture was carefully spread into the natural groove, running down each celery stalk. After chilling in the refrigerator, the celery was sliced into small pieces that revealed the creamy filling inside. The combination worked beautifully. The celery stayed crisp and fresh. The filling was cool, rich, and savory. And because the ingredients were inexpensive, stuffed celery became especially popular during the difficult economic years of the 1970s. Country cooks understood something that modern entertaining often forgets. You didn't need expensive ingredients to make guests feel welcome. A package of cream cheese, a bunch of celery, a few pantry ingredients, that was enough. Stuffed celery also brought balance to the appetizer table. It sat beside cheese balls, sausage bites, deviled eggs, and crackers, offering something lighter and fresher. Many children ignored it. Many adults reached for it first. And by the end of the evening, the platter usually looked just as empty as everything else. Today, celery often appears only as part of a vegetable tray, but stuffed celery once had a place of honor on the country appetizer table. And honestly, it may deserve one again. 21. Little Smokies in barbecue sauce. The arrival of the crock pot during the early 1970s changed country entertaining forever, and few recipes benefited more than Little Smokies simmering in sauce. If you walked into a church fellowship hall, a holiday gathering, or a family reunion, during those years, there was a good chance a slow cooker sat quietly in the corner with steam rising from the lid. Beside it sat a small bowl of toothpicks, and every few minutes, somebody would lift the lid, stir the sauce, and sneak one before anyone noticed. The recipe itself could not have been simpler. Packages of cocktail sausages were emptied into the slow cooker and covered with barbecue sauce, brown sugar, Worcestershire sauce, or sometimes grape jelly. Every family seemed to have their own version, and every cook believed theirs was the one everyone secretly hoped would appear. As the sausages slowly heated, the sauce thickened around them. The sugars caramelized slightly, creating a sticky glaze that clung to every bite. The smokiness of the sausage mixed with the sweetness of the sauce, producing a flavor that was both comforting and impossible to stop eating. The real beauty of Little Smokies was convenience. The hostess could set the crock pot on low, place the toothpicks nearby, and spend the evening talking with guests instead of standing in the kitchen. The appetizer practically served itself. These little sausages became fixtures at football parties, New Year's celebrations, church potlucks, and holiday gatherings throughout country America. Children loved them, adults loved them, and almost everyone took more than they intended. Today, many people still make Little Smokies, but they no longer seem to occupy the center of the room the way they once did. During the 1970s, the crock pot itself felt modern and exciting, and these tiny sausages became one of its greatest success stories. Sometimes the simplest recipes end up lasting the longest. 20. Country ham biscuits. There was a time when serving country ham meant something. In many southern homes, a cured country ham hanging in the smokehouse represented months of work and one of the most valuable foods a family owned. Bringing it out for guests was a sign that the occasion truly mattered. Country ham biscuits became one of the most beloved appetizers throughout the rural South during the 1960s and 1970s. They appeared at weddings, funerals, Christmas open houses, church gatherings, and nearly every event where large numbers of people gathered. The biscuits themselves were usually small, buttermilk biscuits baked until golden and split while still warm. A thin layer of butter might be spread inside, although many cooks skipped it entirely. Then came the ham. Country ham was sliced paper thin because it didn't need much thickness. The curing process had concentrated the flavor into something deeply salty, smoky, and rich. One small slice carried tremendous flavor. The combination worked perfectly. The soft biscuit balanced the salty ham. The warmth of the bread softened the meat. Every bite seemed to disappear almost immediately. A platter of country ham biscuits rarely survived the first hour of any gathering. People often stood around the kitchen eating them one at a time while waiting for the meal to begin. Country ham itself represented something larger than food. Families cured their own hams, smoked them for months, and stored them carefully. Slicing into one meant that guests mattered. In many homes, country ham only appeared during important occasions. Today, many younger people have never tasted true country ham. Supermarkets offer substitutes, but the old salt-cured hams hanging in smokehouses have become increasingly rare. The biscuits remain, the memories remain, and anyone who grew up eating them can still remember exactly how they tasted. 19. Cocktail meatballs in grape jelly sauce. Few appetizers surprised first-time guests more than grape jelly meatballs. The very idea sounded strange. Meatballs and jelly? Most people assumed somebody was joking, but one taste usually changed their minds. The recipe became enormously popular during the 1970s, especially after slow cookers became common in American kitchens. Homemade meatballs or frozen meatballs were placed into the crock pot alongside a bottle of chili sauce and a jar of grape jelly. As the mixture heated, the jelly melted into the sauce and created something nobody expected. The sweetness balanced the tanginess. The chili sauce added just enough flavor without becoming spicy. The glaze became thick, dark, and glossy, and every meatball emerged coated in a sauce that people simply could not identify. Guests constantly asked the same question: "What's in this?" When somebody finally answered grape jelly, most people refused to believe it. The recipe spread rapidly through church cookbooks, women's magazines, and community recipe collections. It became especially popular because it allowed the hostess to prepare food ahead of time while spending the evening with guests. The meatballs stayed warm for hours. The sauce improved as it sat, and the toothpick bowl beside the crock pot slowly emptied. For many people, grape jelly meatballs perfectly represent the creativity of country cooking. Families used inexpensive ingredients already sitting in the pantry and somehow created something memorable. Today, people still occasionally make them, especially during the holidays. But there was a time when almost every gathering seemed to have a slow cooker full of them sitting somewhere in the room. And every single guest asked the exact same question. 18. Cheese balls with dried beef. The cheese ball once ruled the holiday table, but one particular version became especially popular throughout country America. It began with a small glass jar of dried beef. Many people still remember those little jars because they often became drinking glasses after the meat was gone. Entire generations drank orange juice from former dried beef jars without giving it a second thought. The appetizer itself started with softened cream cheese mixed with chopped green onions, Worcestershire sauce, garlic powder, and finely chopped dried beef. The mixture was chilled until firm enough to shape by hand. Then it was rolled into a ball. Additional dried beef covered the outside, creating a savory coating that looked almost decorative. The finished cheese ball sat in the middle of a tray, surrounded by crackers. Guests gathered around it almost immediately. The cream cheese provided richness and tang. The dried beef added an intense salty flavor that modern snack foods rarely offer. Every cracker carried both flavors together. Holiday parties throughout the 1960s and 1970s seemed incomplete without at least one cheese ball somewhere on the table. Some families used nuts, others used bacon, but dried beef remained especially popular because of its strong flavor and long shelf life. It was also inexpensive. A few packages of cream cheese, one small jar of dried beef, and a handful of pantry ingredients could feed an entire room. Many country hostesses prepared cheese balls the day before company arrived. The flavors improved overnight, and the finished appetizer required no last-minute work. Today, cheese balls have largely disappeared outside of holidays, but for many families, the sight of one sitting on a platter immediately brings back Christmas lights, card tables, and living rooms filled with relatives. 17. Relish trays. Before every holiday meal, before the turkey reached the table, and before the main dishes arrived from the kitchen, many country homes brought out the relish tray. The tray itself often lived inside the china cabinet for most of the year. Crystal dishes with divided sections waited quietly behind glass until Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, or Sunday company required them. Then they emerged. Each section held something different: sweet pickles, black olives, celery sticks, carrot sticks, radishes, pickled beets, watermelon rind pickles, sometimes even stuffed olives or homemade pickles from the cellar. The relish tray required almost no cooking, yet it somehow made every table feel abundant. Children usually reached for the olives. Adults sampled the pickles. Someone always ate too many radishes, and nearly everyone picked at the tray while waiting for the meal. The flavors provided something important. The crunch of celery, the sharpness of pickles, and the saltiness of olives prepared the appetite for heavier foods that would soon follow. Country cooks understood balance. The relish tray brightened the table, both visually and physically. Grandmothers often arranged them carefully, almost like jewelers arranging gemstones. The colors mattered. The placement mattered. A beautiful relish tray suggested that guests were important enough to deserve extra effort. Today, the divided crystal dishes still sit inside countless cabinets across America. Many have not been used in years, but for people who grew up seeing them appear before every holiday meal, the memory remains vivid. The tray may have disappeared. The feeling it created never really did. 16. Sausage cheese balls. There were very few church gatherings during the 1960s and 1970s that didn't have at least one tray of sausage cheese balls sitting somewhere near the coffee. They appeared at Christmas breakfasts, baby showers, church socials, funeral receptions, and nearly every potluck that brought people together. The recipe itself came straight from the biscuit box, which is exactly how many great country recipes found their way into American kitchens. Housewives clipped recipes from magazines, copied them from neighbors, and saved the backs of boxes because they knew good recipes could come from almost anywhere. A pound of breakfast sausage was mixed with shredded sharp cheddar and biscuit mix until everything came together into a heavy dough. It wasn't elegant work. Most cooks simply used their hands, kneading everything together until the sausage, cheese, and flour became one mixture. Small portions were rolled into balls and baked until golden. As they cooked, the sausage fat soaked into the biscuit mixture, while the cheese melted and crisped along the edges. The outside became slightly firm, while the inside stayed soft and savory. The smell alone could fill an entire house. Children usually hovered near the oven, waiting for the first batch to cool. Adults claimed they were only going to have one while waiting for dinner, but very few people ever stopped there. What made sausage cheese balls so popular was their reliability. They could be prepared ahead of time. They traveled well. They stayed warm for quite a while. And perhaps most importantly, almost everybody liked them. They weren't fancy. They weren't expensive. Nobody would have described them as elegant. But at church gatherings across country America, the tray almost always emptied before the casseroles were even uncovered. Some foods survive because they're sophisticated. Others survive because they're simply impossible to stop eating. Sausage cheese balls belong firmly in the second category. 15. Clam dip. There was a period during the 1960s and 1970s when nearly every hostess seemed to keep a can of minced clams in the pantry. For many families living far from the ocean, canned clams felt slightly exotic. They brought a small taste of the coast to kitchens hundreds of miles inland, and the clam dip became one of the easiest ways to serve something that felt just a little more sophisticated. The recipe came together quickly. Softened cream cheese was mixed with minced clams, lemon juice, Worcestershire sauce, onion powder, and black pepper. Some cooks added sour cream. Others preferred mayonnaise. The finished dip chilled overnight so the flavors could blend together. Served with Ritz crackers, potato chips, or buttery club crackers, clam dip offered something people weren't accustomed to tasting. The cream cheese provided richness. The clams brought saltiness and a slight chew. The lemon brightened everything. And the Worcestershire added a depth that people often couldn't quite identify. Many cocktail parties during the 1970s featured clam dip sitting beside cheese balls and relish trays. It felt grown up. It felt modern. And for families who rarely ate seafood, it felt special. One of the remarkable things about clam dip is how strongly it triggers memories. People who grew up eating it often remember it instantly after a single bite. Christmas parties, card tables, wood-paneled living rooms, football games playing quietly in the background, the smell of coffee brewing in the kitchen. Modern appetizer tables tend to favor spinach dip, buffalo chicken dip, or guacamole. Clam dip has quietly faded away, but for those who remember it, the flavor still carries an entire decade inside it. Somewhere along the way, appetizers changed. The frozen snack tray arrived. The supermarket vegetable platter arrived. The pre-packaged cheese tray arrived. Everything became easier. Everything became faster. And in many ways, everything became exactly the same. The recipes we're talking about tonight weren't special because they were expensive. Most of them were incredibly affordable. They were special because somebody made them. A neighbor stirred the dip. A grandmother rolled the dough. A church friend brought the platter. The appetizer didn't arrive from a refrigerated display case. It arrived from somebody's kitchen. And that made all the difference. The countdown continues. Coming up, we're about to reach one appetizer that made people feel fancy, even when they spent very little money making it. 14. Crab puffs. For many country families during the 1960s and 1970s, crab represented luxury. Fresh seafood was difficult to find in many parts of the country, and even when it was available, it often cost more than many families wanted to spend. Canned crab changed that. Suddenly, country cooks could bring a little elegance to their tables without leaving town. Crab puffs became especially popular during Christmas parties, anniversary celebrations, and New Year's gatherings. They looked impressive, tasted rich, and made guests feel as though they were eating something served in a restaurant. The filling usually combined canned crab meat, softened cream cheese, mayonnaise, grated onion, and Worcestershire sauce. Some recipes added a little lemon juice or paprika. The mixture was spooned onto toasted bread rounds, crackers, or small pastry shells before being baked or broiled until the tops turned golden. As the filling heated, the cream cheese softened into the crab, while the tops browned slightly. The flavor felt rich. The crab brought a sweetness that paired beautifully with the creamy filling. The onion added just enough sharpness, and the toasted bread underneath provided the perfect crunch. These appetizers often appeared during special occasions because they made ordinary gatherings feel important. A tray of crab puffs sitting on the table immediately suggested that tonight was different. Many guests probably never realized that the entire recipe could be made for very little money. That was one of the great talents of country cooking, taking modest ingredients and creating something that felt luxurious. Today, crab puffs appear only occasionally, but there was a time when they represented country elegance at its very finest. 13. Fried pickles. People often talk about fried pickles as if they were invented by modern restaurants. The truth is that country cooks had been making them for decades. Throughout the South during the late 1960s and 1970s, fried pickles appeared at fish fries, backyard gatherings, and family parties long before they became a menu item at sports bars. The idea was surprisingly simple. Pickle slices were drained and dried before being coated in seasoned flour, cornmeal, or a simple batter. They were then dropped into hot oil for just long enough to create a crisp, golden coating. The magic happened when people took their first bite. The outside was hot and crunchy. The pickle inside remained cool, sour, and slightly crisp. The contrast surprised people. The vinegar cut through the richness of the fried coating, creating a flavor combination that was nearly impossible to stop eating. Country cooks often served them with ranch dressing, hot sauce, or simply by themselves. They were inexpensive, they required very few ingredients, and they transformed an ordinary jar of pickles into something completely different. Many families made them because pickles already sat in the refrigerator. Flour and cornmeal already lived in the pantry. Hot oil and a cast iron skillet could turn those ingredients into an appetizer that disappeared within minutes. Today, fried pickles are everywhere. Chain restaurants sell them. Sports bars serve them. Fast food restaurants occasionally offer them. But the homemade versions cooked in cast iron still taste different. And many people who grew up eating them believe the originals remain the best. 12. Rumaki. Stay with us on this one, because Rumaki may be the most divisive appetizer on this entire list. Some people absolutely loved it. Others couldn't believe anyone ever ate it. Yet during the 1960s and early 1970s, Rumaki appeared at countless parties throughout America, including many country homes that wanted to serve something a little more exotic. The recipe originally came from Polynesian restaurants, but it eventually found its way into church cookbooks, women's magazines, and holiday parties across the country. Chicken liver formed the center of each bite. A water chestnut was added for crunch. Everything was wrapped in bacon, secured with a toothpick, and often marinated in soy sauce and brown sugar before cooking. As the bacon crisped, the brown sugar caramelized. The soy sauce added saltiness. The water chestnut stayed crunchy, and the liver became soft and rich. For people who enjoyed liver, Rumaki was absolutely wonderful. For people who disliked liver, the idea seemed almost impossible. What made Rumaki interesting was how adventurous it felt. Country families who rarely ate international foods suddenly found themselves serving appetizers inspired by Polynesian restaurants. The 1960s introduced Americans to tiki culture, exotic restaurants, and ingredients that many families had never used before. Rumaki represented that moment. It allowed a farmhouse kitchen to feel slightly worldly for one evening. Over time, liver gradually disappeared from many American tables. Younger generations grew up without eating it, and Rumaki slowly vanished alongside it. Today, many people have never even heard the name, but those who remember it usually remember it clearly. Whether they loved it or hated it, there was rarely anything in between. 11. Hot crab dip. There was a time when a bubbling dish of hot crab dip sitting in the middle of the table could make an ordinary gathering feel like a special occasion. During the 1960s and 1970s, country cooks discovered that a single can of crab meat could become one of the most popular appetizers of the entire evening. Softened cream cheese formed the base. Mayonnaise added richness. Grated onion, Worcestershire sauce, and sometimes a little horseradish gave the dip its flavor. The crab was folded in gently, allowing the pieces to remain intact. Some cooks topped the dish with crushed butter crackers, while others preferred sliced almonds or a little paprika. As the dip baked, the edges bubbled and the top turned golden. The smell alone brought people into the kitchen. Crackers surrounded the baking dish almost immediately. Guests gathered around the table, carefully scooping portions while trying not to break their crackers in the process. The dip was rich, creamy, slightly sweet from the crab, and carried just enough seasoning to make people ask for the recipe. For many country families, crab still felt luxurious. Fresh seafood was difficult to find in much of rural America, and canned crab offered a way to serve something that felt elegant without spending a fortune. Hot crab dip became a holiday favorite. Christmas parties, New Year's gatherings, and anniversary celebrations often featured it near the center of the table. It was one of those dishes that made people stand around and talk, and somehow the dish always emptied much faster than anyone expected. 10. Bacon-wrapped water chestnuts. Some appetizers survived because they were filling. Others survived because they were inexpensive. Bacon-wrapped water chestnuts survived because they were impossible to stop eating. For many country hostesses during the 1960s and 1970s, these little bites offered the perfect combination of sweet, salty, smoky, and crunchy. Whole water chestnuts were wrapped in bacon, secured with toothpicks, and brushed with a glaze made from brown sugar, ketchup, soy sauce, or sometimes barbecue sauce. The oven did the rest. As the bacon cooked, the glaze thickened and darkened. The sugars caramelized while the bacon crisped around the edges, and somehow the water chestnut stayed crunchy. That crunch surprised people every single time. Most vegetables become soft when cooked. Water chestnuts refused. The contrast between the crispy bacon and the firm center created a texture people remembered long after the party ended. These appetizers often disappeared within the first 30 minutes of a gathering. Toothpicks piled up on napkins around the room. Guests returned for second and third servings while pretending they had only eaten one. The recipe wasn't difficult. The ingredients weren't expensive, but the results felt special. And in many ways, that's exactly what country entertaining did best. 9. Pimento cheese tea sandwiches. Long before charcuterie boards became fashionable, pimento cheese quietly ruled the South. Every church reception, bridal shower, funeral gathering, and ladies' luncheon seemed to feature small sandwiches made with white bread and pimento cheese. The crusts were usually removed. The sandwiches were cut into triangles or squares, and they disappeared almost immediately. The spread itself was wonderfully simple: sharp cheddar cheese, mayonnaise, diced pimentos, sometimes cream cheese, sometimes onion. Every family had its own recipe. The flavor was rich, slightly sweet, and wonderfully sharp. The creamy spread paired perfectly with soft white bread, creating a sandwich that somehow felt both humble and elegant at the same time. Country cooks appreciated pimento cheese because it fed large groups without costing very much. A single bowl of spread could make dozens of sandwiches. These little sandwiches often appeared beside coffee cups during afternoon visits. They sat on trays at church socials. They accompanied punch bowls at wedding receptions. And for many Southerners, pimento cheese still tastes like home. Today, pimento cheese survives, but the delicate little tea sandwiches have become much harder to find. The white bread, the carefully trimmed crusts, the serving trays. Those details belong to another era, but the flavor remains just as comforting as ever. 8. Watermelon rind. Pickles. Few recipes demonstrate country thrift better than watermelon rind pickles. After the sweet red watermelon had been eaten during the summer, country cooks looked at the thick white rind and saw another meal waiting to happen. Nothing was wasted if it could still be used. The green skin was removed, leaving the pale rind underneath. The pieces were soaked overnight before being simmered in vinegar, sugar, cinnamon, cloves, and other spices until they became almost translucent. The finished pickles surprised people who had never tasted them. They were sweet, tangy, warm with spice, and slightly crisp. Watermelon rind pickles often appeared on relish trays beside olives, celery, and sweet pickles. Their golden color stood out immediately, and guests frequently asked what they were before taking a bite. Country families canned them in large batches during the summer and enjoyed them throughout the year. The jars lined pantry shelves alongside preserves, beans, and pickled vegetables. These recipes represented an older way of thinking. If something could be used, it was used. If something could be preserved, it was preserved. Nothing was wasted. Today, many people have never even heard of watermelon rind pickles, but for generations of country families, they were simply another part of the table. 7. Cocktail rye toasts. Small slices of party rye bread became one of the most useful ingredients in American kitchens during the 1960s and 1970s. Those little square loaves appeared in grocery stores specifically for appetizers. Country cooks topped them with countless combinations of meat, cheese, and spreads before sliding them under the broiler. Some used sausage, some used cheese, some used crab, some used chopped beef. The bread crisped around the edges while the toppings bubbled and browned. Guests could hold them with one hand while carrying coffee or punch in the other. The small size made them perfect. One bite, maybe two, then back for another. Cocktail rye toasts appeared at football parties, Christmas gatherings, card nights, and New Year's celebrations. Entire trays disappeared within minutes, and perhaps their greatest strength was their flexibility. Whatever ingredients happened to be available could often become a topping. The bread became a blank canvas for country creativity. Today, those little rye loaves are much harder to find, but for many people, the sight of them immediately brings back memories of holiday parties and crowded living rooms. 6. 3. Bean salad cups. Before anyone talked about protein bowls or healthy meal prep, country cooks were already serving 3-bean salad. Green beans, wax beans, and kidney beans were mixed together with vinegar, sugar, oil, and celery salt. The salad sat overnight so the flavors could blend. The result was surprisingly refreshing. The beans absorbed the sweet and tangy dressing. The vinegar brightened everything. The different textures made every bite interesting. 3-bean salad often appeared in small cups or serving dishes during church dinners and potlucks. It offered something lighter among the richer foods on the table. Country cooks appreciated it because canned beans were affordable and available year-round. The salad could be prepared ahead of time, and it actually improved after sitting overnight. Many families kept the recipe in handwritten cookbooks. Today, it appears less frequently, but for people who grew up with it, the flavor remains instantly recognizable. 5. Stuffed mushrooms with sausage. During the 1970s, stuffed mushrooms became one of the appetizers that made guests say, "You made these yourself?" Large mushroom caps were filled with sausage, breadcrumbs, onions, garlic, and Parmesan cheese before being baked until golden. The mushrooms softened, the sausage browned. The filling became rich and savory. They looked expensive, they looked complicated, but they were surprisingly affordable. Country cooks discovered that mushrooms could turn simple ingredients into something that looked like restaurant food. These appetizers often appeared during Christmas, anniversaries, and dinner parties, where the hostess wanted to impress her guests. The earthy flavor of the mushrooms paired perfectly with the richness of the sausage. And because they were served individually, each guest felt as though they were receiving something special. Even today, stuffed mushrooms remain delicious, but the sausage versions that once dominated country appetizer tables have largely disappeared. 4. Welsh rarebit. The name confused almost everyone. There was no rabbit. There never had been. Welsh rarebit was simply one of the greatest cheese sauces ever created. Sharp cheddar cheese was melted into a butter and flour sauce before being seasoned with mustard, Worcestershire sauce, cayenne pepper, and sometimes beer. The thick sauce was poured over toasted bread and placed under the broiler. The top browned, the cheese bubbled, and the result was incredibly rich. Book clubs, card parties, and small gatherings often featured Welsh rarebit because it felt elegant without being expensive. The slight bitterness from the beer balanced the cheese. The toast added texture, and the sauce made people reach for another piece. Today, very few Americans make Welsh rarebit, but for those who remember it, it remains one of the great forgotten comfort foods. 3. Boiled peanuts. Along countless southern roads, handmade signs advertised boiled peanuts. Large pots simmered for hours. The smell drifted through the air, and people stopped. Green peanuts were cooked slowly in heavily salted water until they became soft and tender. The shells softened. The peanuts absorbed the brine. The flavor became earthy, salty, and completely unique. People ate them from paper sacks while sitting on porches, attending ball games, or standing beside pickup trucks. The shells piled up. The conversations continued. Boiled peanuts weren't fancy. They weren't elegant, but they belonged to the South in a way few foods ever have. For many country families, they represented summer itself, and one taste can still bring it all back. 2. Hanky pankies. No appetizer on this list had a stranger name, and very few disappeared as completely. Ground beef, sausage, Velveeta cheese, Worcestershire sauce, and oregano were cooked together and spread onto small slices of rye bread. The bread was broiled until crisp, the cheese bubbled, the edges browned. The result was rich, savory, and almost impossible to stop eating. These little sandwiches appeared at football games, holiday gatherings, and New Year's Eve parties throughout the Midwest and much of country America. Many people prepared entire trays ahead of time and kept them frozen until guests arrived. The unusual name always started conversations. The flavor made people stay near the tray. Today, many younger people have never even heard of hanky pankies, but during the 1970s, they seemed to be everywhere. 1. Olive cheese balls. If there was one appetizer that perfectly captured holiday gatherings in country America during the 1960s and 1970s, it was olive cheese balls. They appeared at Christmas parties, church socials, New Year's gatherings, and family get-togethers all across the country. They weren't expensive, they weren't difficult to make, and yet somehow they always felt special. The recipe started with large green olives stuffed with pimentos. Each olive was wrapped in a dough made from sharp cheddar cheese, butter, and flour before being rolled into a small ball and baked until golden. As they cooked, the cheese melted into the dough while the outside became crisp and buttery. Inside waited the warm olive, bringing a salty, briny flavor that balanced the richness perfectly. The first bite surprised people. The outside was flaky and savory. The center was soft and salty. And somehow the combination worked far better than anyone expected. These little appetizers often appeared only during the holidays, which made them feel even more special. Many families had recipes tucked away in old recipe boxes and only pulled them out when company was coming. Today, olive cheese balls have almost completely disappeared from appetizer tables. Many younger Americans have never heard of them. But for those who remember them, they bring back Christmas music playing in the living room, folding tables covered with food, and relatives gathering around the kitchen waiting for supper. Sometimes the recipes we miss the most are the ones that only appeared once or twice a year, and that's exactly what made them special. What disappeared along with these appetizers wasn't just the food, it was the visit. There was a time when neighbors stopped by without calling. Family gathered after church, and people stayed long enough for supper to finish cooking. A plate of deviled eggs or a tray of ham biscuits wasn't simply something to eat. It was a way of saying, sit down, stay a while, you're always welcome here. We didn't just lose these country appetizers, we lost some of the moments they were made for. And maybe that's why these old recipes still matter. Because every time one finds its way back onto the table, even for a little while, the good old days come back with it. Leave a comment below and tell us which of these forgotten appetizers brings back the strongest memories for you.